It's the start of the festive season, everyone. That special time of year where we think of love, hope, joy, remember, peace on earth, goodwill towards mankind. So let's start it off by talking about Hanya Yanagihara. Hello everyone and welcome to Bound in Prose. I am your host Matt, and as you can see my setup has changed a little bit. I've got my collection of nutcrackers. I have a Santa Claus that looks drunk, he's holding a saxophone, and my snowman that's holding a saxophone. So we are getting in the mood for Christmas now that Thanksgiving is done. And this week I thought, since I have spent the past week with my family, I haven't done a whole bunch of reading, was celebrating Thanksgiving and just wanted to take some time to appreciate being with them and not just sitting back in my room and reading. So I thought this week I would talk about a book that I've read recently and that I don't feel like gets a lot of love on BookTube. I have seen some people talk about it, but it's a bit overshadowed by this author's second work. So today we are going to be talking about The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara. So if you've seen my top 10 favorite books video, you know that I've read A Little Life, and that is one of my favorites. I put it as number 3. I have also read To Paradise, which I also enjoyed, if not quite as much as her other 2 novels. And so I ended up reading The People in the Trees third, and I have to say that I really enjoyed this book, and I can see where A Little Life came out of this book. And what I mean by that is that Hanya Yanagihara, if you've read A Little Life, if you know anything about A Little Life, you know it's a very difficult book that talks a lot about trauma, self-harm, a lot of other topics that I really just don't want to say explicitly. Like I said in my top 10 video, if you're interested, please do your research. There's lots of information on that book out there. But anyways, The People in the Trees being her first book, I can see where the beginnings of her type of atmosphere and mood and themes and characterizations went from like being an 8 or a 9 here to being like a 15 in A Little Life. So The People in the Trees concerns the story of Dr. Norton Perina, and I'm going to try really hard not to call him Edward Norton in this video. So Dr. Norton Perina, and he has traveled to a remote island to study a tribe that is basically untouched by modern civilization. So the way that this book is formatted is that most of it is his written memoir. So most of it is in first person, and it has been compiled by a colleague while Dr. Perina is in prison. Basically, he is convicted of a crime, and I will be a little bit more explicit on that a little bit later in the video. But yes, so that's the setup. The first part of the novel really kind of builds up Perina in his early life and how he went to college and began like working in laboratories and, doing tests on mice, and kind of how he became like a scientist in his early age. And then the second act, I guess, of the novel throughout most of the rest of the book is his adventure on this island. Now, I've heard some people say that this is an adventure novel, and I would be cautious about saying that. It's not like Indiana Jones adventure. It's like a very realistic expedition sort of adventure. So don't get your hopes up for that kind of like full-on action flick kind of adventure. The third part of the novel, which is like the last 50 pages or so, I can't remember exactly, deals with him in like the modern age, and addresses this issue that he has been incarcerated for. So Dr. Perina, when he is a student, is asked to attend this expedition to this remote island, and he goes with a couple of other anthropologists to study this tribe. And while they are there, they discover that this tribe holds the secret to a type of immortality. And so this type of immortality is not perfect. So what happens is that this tribe has found a way to keep their bodies from aging, but their minds continue to age. So as they are there, they find these outcasts of the tribe that basically have like very primitive animalistic mentalities because they have been alive for 200 or 300 years. And so while the scientists are on this island, they discover that the way that this comes about is that the tribe eats the flesh of this specific kind of turtle. The tribe uses this as sort of a ritual, and it's only allowed that certain people of a certain age are allowed to eat the meat of this turtle, and then they become these outcasts to the tribe. And so Dr. Perina, against the tribe's wishes, basically finds and kills one of the turtles and has it shipped back to his lab where he can study it further. And so that's how this gets out, and he becomes very rich and famous and popular because of this discovery. And then the novel talks about how other scientists and people start trying to go to this island and ravage it and destroy it, and the turtles basically become no more. So I think one of the major themes of this novel is moral relativism. And we can come at this from a number of angles. And so one is, if you were to find the secret of immortality, like, would it be your moral obligation to bring it back to society to help other people? Is it okay to destroy the land and the culture of this particular people for this, this gain? And then there is also, I don't think it's moral relativism, but I think Hanya Yanagihara comes at moral relativism through the eyes of our main character. I guess we should just go ahead and get it out of the way. So Dr. Perina is incarcerated and is accused at the beginning of the novel for molesting one of his adopted children. And so he's writing this memoir from prison. And at the end of the novel, it is basically added as like an addendum. This particular section that the compiler, the person that it was compiling the pieces of this memoir, was going to leave out, but he feels it's necessary to put it in there. And you find out that Dr. Perina actually did molest this adopted child. And so, so it's, like I said in my 1Q84 review, it is used to make you hate the main character. It is used to let you know that he is an unreliable narrator and that he sees himself basically as like this morally upstanding person that really didn't do anything wrong. I got to the end of this book and I thought to myself, what did I expect? I mean, like, it's Hanya Yanagihara. I've read 2 of her books now. Why didn't I just accept what she was telling me about this character from the very beginning? So anyways, in my 1Q84 review, I talked about this book very briefly, because one of my big problems with 1Q84 was there was a scene that was an intimacy scene between a man and a 17-year-old girl, and the way that it was handled to me was just like, it just kind of gets brushed aside, and the author isn't really saying anything about that topic. This is a bit different for me. I mean, it's abhorrent. Like, let me just go ahead and say that. It's never okay. But in a novel, I try to ask myself, like, why is this being used? What is the purpose for it being there? and what is the author saying about that topic. And so one of the things about Hanya Yanagihara, even though the book is written mostly from Dr. Perina's viewpoint, you get to the end and he doesn't really feel like he has done anything wrong. But in the end, what it does is it lets you know that your narrator is unreliable, that while he finds himself to be this brilliant scientist who has done nothing wrong, you as the reader know better. And it calls into question a lot of what he's done, or it puts a lot of what he's done into a different light and really solidifies that he is the monster that you have been suspicious that he is. So let's go ahead and move on from that topic. So the other aspect of this novel that concerns moral relativism, like I said, is about going in and, basically destroying this tribe's land and their way of life for this gain. And I've heard people say, like, what happens when men try to become gods, which I think that that's really interesting because, Dr. Perina is trying to find this secret to immortality, and he does discover it, but then he's trying to, come back and figure out a way to, reproduce it and mass produce it. And so, but so much of this book is so devastating after you have spent the time on this island and you have come to, live with this tribe for so long and get to know their way of life. And I mean, that whole part of the book is so super interesting. And then for the last 150 pages or so, the last third of the book, you get to watch or read about this tribe's life being slowly destroyed, and the trees being cut down and all of the turtles killed, and the outcasts and how they can't find them anymore, and just basically how this tribe is obliterated. And that's sad because that has happened in history multiple times. And so this book is a kind of a bummer, which I guess if you're watching my channel by now, you're just like, Matt, every book you read is going to be a bummer. That's what you like. And I promise it's not, but this is just another one. But still, Hanya Yanagihara is an excellent writer, and what I really appreciate about her is not necessarily her dark content, but the way that she sucks you into her stories, the way that she writes her characters, the way that she makes them real people, so that when she gets to her dark content, it really affects you. It angers you. It, makes you sad and, devastates you. And so that is one of the things I think Hanya Yanagihara does very strongly. I put this behind A Little Life. I still think A Little Life is her strongest novel. I think that this is a phenomenal work, and I think that as a debut novel, it is really quite something. And so, but if you know anything about Hanya Yanagihara, like I have said before, you kind of got to know what you're getting yourself into. And this being her third work, I went into it and I found myself, even at the beginning, I was going, okay, so I don't know that I believe that just yet. I don't know that I believe that Dr. Perina has done what he's been accused of. And then you get to the book and you find out that he absolutely did, and you're like, oh. So I want to say I threw this book down whenever I finished it. I didn't physically chuck it as hard as I could, but I did just kind of plop it, and I was so mad. If you are interested in Hanya Yanagihara, you've heard about A Little Life, but some of what's been said out there is putting you off a bit, and you might still be wanting to give her a shot and okay with some dark material, but just don't want to go full force into something like A Little Life. I think that this is a good entry point. It is a interesting read. It is well written, it is captivating, and you can kind of test your mettle against some of what Hanya Yanagihara is known for in terms of her content. So in conclusion, The People in the Trees by Hanya Yanagihara, a intellectually stimulating, poignant, but devastatingly tragic read. So that's going to do it for this week, everybody. Thank you so much for joining me. I know we went through another sort of dark book, but I appreciate you being here if you stuck around till the end. Like, comment, subscribe. I will try to have something a bit more hopeful next week, a bit more fun, and I will talk to you again soon. Thank you, and happy reading. What's that? Thank you. I think the red lights are a nice touch too.